I always knew that I wasn't going to just be there to be somebody's assistant.
Right.
So I had to figure out what could I do to separate myself from the rest. We decided that we were going to start a jazz and comedy club. We called it Terminal D with these folks. I would be the DJ because another thing was, if you go to those mainstream clubs, all you heard was the piano or you hear the snare drum. So I'm getting all these records from Def Jam, like my mom used to get the records from RCA, because I done moved on from networking, right? I moved on, and now I got a job at Def Jam Records. Okay. Now all of this is it's like throwing all these different pieces into the pot.
And then the Def Jam.
Def Jam.
What was the role?
But let me tell you what happened. I'm getting ready to tell you the role. Check this out. The comedy and jazz at Terminal D was an amazing situation, because at first the jazz was popular, right? And Rocky's band was like amazing, and even Regina Bell would sit in. You know what I mean? And I never forget, Regina took a ride with me from the Terminal D to go down to this other spot that I had started called the Uptown Cafe, because the jazz was becoming popular, right? But then all of a sudden, the comedy started becoming popular too. So everything was popping at once. Now, I get a phone call from a lady who says that she heard about me from her cousin who works with Gregory Hines, the late great Gregory Hines. She's in his band. So she's managing a vibraphonist who signed to Columbia Records. Monty Croft was his name. And she was wondering if I can get Monty a gig at my spot. I didn't have any openings. Everybody was coming through there. It was serious, right? That place was actually moving more with the jazz than Terminal D. However, Terminal D was rising with comedy, okay? So this is where it intertwines. I'm at Terminal D one night. We doing our comedy show. And this kid gets on stage, and I'm really impressed with him, right? Young kid. So I asked him to come talk to me for a minute, and I'm talking to him, and I'm like, I think I could really help you. And his boy is over on the other side, ice grilling me and stuff, and I asked him who's this dude? Because anybody tell you, I'll come right at you if I have to. So he was like, he's cool. I'm like, okay, cool. So next thing I know, I get a phone call about a concert that's going on up in Ossining, New York, a jazz festival with Lonnie Liston Smith. So it was like, I'm going to take this comedian and put him on, give him a gig, okay? So now at the same time, I said, you know what? I'm going to call that lady and see if I can get her guy. I ain't have no room at that other room, but I'm going to see if I could get him a gig on that same bill with Lonnie Liston Smith. And I did. Okay, so this happens, and the lady comes to the gig, right? She sees that comedian. She likes the comedian. We're sitting at the table. She takes out her card. She never told me she's operations director at Def Jam Records.
Okay.
I'm looking for a real job, okay?
Okay.
I'm looking for a real job at the time. So after all of this, I get back home and I say, let me call her to see.
Like right away?
Let me call her because I knew she liked my comedian. So I'm gonna call her to see if I can get the comedian on some of those Rush tours. Those, because Def Jam was like it, right? Know what she says to me? She says, now remember, I'm meeting her through jazz, not knowing anything about her working at Def Jam, right? She says to me, Bob, I'm so happy you called. And I'm like, why? She said, you're just the person that I wanted to ask you this. I just got a promotion and I'm looking for an assistant, right? Might you know anyone? I said, you got a promotion, what's going on? She said, I'm president of Def Jam Records, and I'm looking for an assistant. Do you know anyone? Do I know anyone? Let me come in for right. Yo, so I was like in the jazz world, wearing my schoolboys, wearing suits. That's where my head was, right? So I come in for the interview, right? And we're talking about everything but the job, okay? Little did I know, I had the job. She was thinking that I was some young kid that was doing all this, stuff at the, with the jazz, and like I carried myself.
Right.
But underneath me, I was miserable. I was trying to get to that next level, because I didn't even mention one of my first jobs was working in the mailroom at RCA Records. My mom had hooked me up.
So when I hear all that, were you like contemplating at times if you were gonna just give it all up?
No, just waiting for that moment to come. That's what was happening. I was going for, that's why I say never give up. My Pop Warner coach said winners never quit and quitters never win. You know what I mean? And just like the failure to plan is planning to fail. So I had all that all lined up, but when was it going to happen? Yeah. Okay? So now it's about to happen. So when she told me, and her name is Carmen Ashurst, I love you, Carmen. The first thing she said to me was, when you come back, leave the suit in the closet.
Wow.
Because at Def Jam, it was a loose type of thing. And don't you know, when I was getting off the elevator, Russell was getting on the elevator. And I'm saying to myself, that's the same dude that Crush Groove was all about. It was an amazing situation for me.
Yeah.
But the craziest part is not only did I get my job at Def Jam Records, but that comedian who I never told you his name, that was Bill Bellamy.
Yeah.
You dig? So everything came together. Then as I'm working as assistant to the president at Def Jam, I knew the ins and outs of running a record company. I had to, everything. So anybody that needs somebody to run their record company, you might want to holler at a brother. Okay. Because it's real. But more so, I always knew that I wasn't going to just be there to be somebody's assistant.
Right.
So I had to figure out what could I do to separate myself from the rest. And what I did was, everybody wanted a Def Jam jacket. Okay? Everybody wanted a Def Jam record. So how can we reach the masses? Because they only see these people on TV. So you had the Black Expo that started, it was at the Javits Center, and it traveled around the country. So I took Russell's boy Spuddy, who he grew up with in Hollis, and another guy who was my intern at the time, and now he's one of the biggest in the industry, a guy named Mayor. And we got a van, and we rode around, and we set up tables, booths at these event exhibits with the Def Jam. You could sign up to get a Def Jam jacket. You could watch the new videos. We were giving out music and fanny packs and stuff. I was like just trying to do this thing, bruh. You know what I mean? At the same time, Russell and Stan Lathan is getting ready to partner up to do some television stuff.
Okay.
Right? And they're trying to do some things, but I knew I was sitting on this jewel. Okay? In the same way I brought black comedy to Newark, New Jersey, because I was tired of these guys not being able to get these, plays on stage. Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you presented to them and they were like,
Def Comedy Jam.
They got it right away?
But no, I mean, they got it because Russell loved comedy. Stan, he was an icon already. But how are we going to bring all this together? And they was taking meetings with people and stuff, but I'm sitting right here. You know what I mean? And I know everybody they meeting with. All of this. It was crazy because everybody tries to act like they did this. Everybody know the real deal. Everybody know what I was doing. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Did you have to fight for that attention to get them to listen to what you had to say?
Well, no, not necessarily, because everybody knew what I was doing. It's just that they didn't know I could do it to the magnitude that I did it until I did it. okay? And I took some HBO execs up to the Uptown Comedy Club so they can see what was going on with black comedy. They hadn't come out to, I was at Club 88 at the time before this place called the Peppermint that everybody knows. You know what I'm saying? So it went from Terminal D to Club 88 to the Peppermint by way of what was going on at the Uptown, but you also had the Comedy Act Theater. They were already doing their thing out in LA and in Atlanta, whether you know it or not.
Who were some of the towns that was at Uptown? Because I remember seeing footage of that. Like, who were the guys?
Well, at Uptown, see, the thing with Uptown is it was a Sunday night thing that they had going on, and then they also had like a school where they would talk, you know, they would teach these guys comedy and stuff. Big up to Andre and Kev. They did a great job with it. But that was about it unless they went to play like some little colleges or something. But I gave them an incubator at Terminal D. They were coming there every Tuesday night with a new crew of comedians, headlined by a guy named Maceo, the late great Monteria Ivy, and then there was Flex, and then it was Dougie Doug. That was the core. And then it was a lot of other comedians. Some of them moved on to become big record execs and writers and everything. So this thing was really fledgling.
Right. So we get Russell and the other executive, what was the gentleman's name?
Stan.
We get Russell and Stan on page with you. What's the first thing you had to do or execute?
The first thing I had to do was identify who might make this pilot work.
Pilot, okay.
It was a pilot. It was like I was going to try to find 10 comedians.
Okay.
And I had already knew some. You know, I knew Joe Torre, I knew Steve Harvey, I knew Bill Bellamy. You know, but how am I going to bring the rest together? So I said, I have to be able to make this thing somewhat regional too. So let me figure out, besides New York and LA, where to go. Chicago. Okay. You gotta go to Chicago.
Okay.
Atlanta and DC. Those were the ones.
And this is you floating around these different cities?
This is me just figuring out who came from these places. You knew that Chicago had some power. DC had some power. Let's add to that mix. So that's how the first pilot was pretty much done between those cities.
When you were traveling around, what was immediately catching your eye? Like, what made you, was it a feeling that you had to feel about a comedian to be like, I need to holler at him?
I still have that feeling. It's amazing that feeling that I get, because it's just one that just hits you. It's just like when you meet that special someone. Okay. You know what you're looking at, you know what you want, you know, and that's what happened.